I'm Pret, and this is my wife Megan, and we're here to share our story. And I'm going to start by sharing my story. I remember being a little more curious about boys and girls, and I remember having a lot of questions and not knowing where to get those questions answered. And there was a lot of confusion that resulted. As life went on, by about age 11, 12, we'd moved out to Utah, and it kind of got worse. The questions got a little bit deeper. That time in life was confusing and difficult, and it was just, as I look back on it, I'd probably say it was almost traumatic. That's a little bit dramatic to say, but that's how it felt. I remember first moving out here and just being so alone. I remember seeing kids grouped together playing basketball and having fun, and I tried the basketball thing, and that just was uncomfortable with my uncoordination and lacking confidence and not being very comfortable. And I remember many times sitting at the lunch table. I remember sitting there and just being so afraid to be me, so afraid that I was going to be rejected. I remember sitting there a couple of times and my chin would start to quibble, and I was so afraid that somebody would notice. And a few times I almost broke into tears. I was so alone, and I didn't know how to ask for help. I didn't know how to find friends or make friends. And so a lot of these feelings really became cemented at that point. Thankfully, high school got a lot better. I dealt with these feelings and I just stuffed them. I bottled them all up. I knew they were there. I was very aware of my attractions towards other guys. I knew that they weren't going away. I thought that if I just kept praying and reading my scriptures that they would. That didn't work. So I'd read more and pray more, and that still didn't work. But what did work was I gained a testimony, and I learned about the gospel, and I gained a real foundation of faith. All the meanwhile, these feelings just stayed under the surface, quite a ways under. I was scared to death of letting anybody find out. I was scared that my parents would find out. I was scared that my friends would find out, and so I hid them. I kept them all secret. And I had a lot of shame. I didn't even know what the word shame meant back then, but I had all kinds of shame about these feelings, and I made certain that they would never be revealed to anybody. Anyway, I knew that I needed to go on a mission. I knew that I wanted to. I had a testimony of the gospel, and I believed that that's what I needed to do, to follow the prophet. And so I submitted my papers, and I went confidently and faithfully. And I made a promise to God that if He would heal me, or fix me rather, that I would serve faithfully and that I would do my best. And I went out there believing wholeheartedly that when I came home, or when I would come home, that these would be all taken care of. And so I worked my butt off. A lot of missionaries work really hard to get a really hot, wife. I was just working hard to want a wife. And that would have been enough for me. I loved being a missionary, and especially knowing that when I got home, this would all be gone. To my dismay, as I got home, I remember distinctly thinking about a week before I was about to leave. I'm like, okay, so any minute now it's just going to change. Maybe it's the bus ride to the mission house and it'll, go away, or maybe it's the airplane ride home, and that'll take care of it. Once I just land back in Salt Lake, it'll be gone. And, minor disappointment here, minor disappointment there. It wasn't gone. I thought maybe it's the homecoming talk. After that, it'll go away. And did a really good homecoming talk. Bore my testimony in check, and it still didn't go away. I thought maybe it just takes another week or two before He kicks this full blessing in, and it didn't go away. And I distinctly remember thinking, once everybody's gone, I'm going to go up to the living room where I've had other spiritual experiences in family prayer, reading the scriptures, and I'm going to pray, and I'm going to finally get the answer. And I distinctly remember getting on my knees, and I prayed, and I said, God, I've done my part. I've served. I've been faithful. I'm ready. take it away. And I waited, and I waited, and I thought, oh, I'm not feeling anything. I'm not feeling the feelings gone, but I felt peace. And I remember distinctly thinking, no, that's not what I'm supposed to feel. I'm supposed to feel these things gone. But I felt peace. And I was confused by that, and yet I was comforted. I took on a lot of classes at school to busy my time and busy my mind. I was working full time, and life got really hard. It didn't get easier. I got a lot of schoolwork done, and I made a lot of money, but I was hiding, and I was trying to cover up my emotions because I was too afraid of feeling them. I was too afraid of confronting my fear around my same-sex attraction. And as time went on in this phase, there's no way I could keep up with what was happening. I was starting to deteriorate spiritually, and I was starting to decline, and my hope was fading, and anger started to bud and grow within me that God didn't take this away, that it's still an issue, and I started to doubt that I could ever have what I've always wanted. And it really ticked me off. I thought, this is not fair. This isn't what I signed up for. And I got really depressed, and I got angry, and I went through the motions of life, but I was not living. It got worse. I ended up making some big mistakes. I finally got to that point where the pain of what I was experiencing was greater than the pain of having to change. I'll never forget that day. I went to work as everything was normal, but I couldn't go on as normal. I went into the bathroom and started dry heaving. I was so sick and distraught with my behavior, with who I knew I was becoming. And so I went immediately to my boss and said, I gotta go home. I'm sick. And he's like, yeah, you've been sick for like a month. We know you're not the normal Pret that we know. And so I went out to my truck. I was just bawling. I called my mom and I said, Mom, we gotta talk. I need you to have an open heart and an open mind. And she knew that something was wrong, but she had no idea what. And she was prepared. And I reacted to how devastated I was inside. I wasn't even thinking as much as it was survival. And I drove home, and she was standing at the door, and she'd flung it open, waiting for me to come up out of my truck, and she just put her arms around me and said, it doesn't matter what it is, I love you, and I'm here for you. And I couldn't even walk, hardly. She helped me get to a seat, and I didn't even make it there all the way, and she wasn't strong enough to keep me up. I sat right there on the ground and just bawled and said, Mom, I'm gay, and I don't know what to do about it. And she was amazing. There was terror for about 13 seconds that shot across her face, and after her own wits came about, it was, there's answers, we're going to find help, I don't know anything about this, but we're going to do whatever it takes. And I just sat there and cried, and I just let it all out, and she listened. I don't even remember exactly what I said. It was just horrible, and yet freeing. My mom immediately did a ton of work and found out all this different research and stuff, and it ended up being awesome. I went to this conference, I met tons of people. It was a remarkable experience. There was a really neat, peaceful, very strong spirit there, and it was just a little music piece they were doing, and a woman was playing Our Savior's Love on the violin, and I remember the Spirit coming and saying, close your eyes, Pret, and just feel. And I closed my eyes and I thought, if the Savior were here, what would he be doing? And in my mind's eye, I saw him, and I saw him walk, and he was there with us, and he didn't take it away, he didn't heal, he didn't change everybody like I'd always prayed for and hoped for. He was just there. and he comforted, and he understood, and it was that was the single moment that I changed. That was the moment I decided, well, this is possible then. In terms of my wife Megan, she and I have known each other for years, and so we were 15 when we met. We met in Sunday school, and I distinctly remember meeting Megan. Her red hair and her personality, she makes herself known and heard. We stayed in contact. We stayed good friends. On my mission, we rode a couple of times, but it wasn't anything romantic, at least not from my end. During all this time, coming home and my big, long sob story of how hard it was, Megan was always there. We dated for a couple weeks. I call it dating, she doesn't. Immediately upon getting home, Megan and I got to a point in our relationship where I knew it couldn't progress any further until she knew the full story. And I knew that she knew something was up with me, but I didn't feel safe to talk to her about it. After gaining some support, friends, telling my parents, I knew that it was time to move on and take some risks. And so I did that. I told her. Megan was awesome. She was unbelievable. I thought that it would end the relationship. I thought that it was over. It was scary as all get out. I insisted we say a prayer, and then I just went into it. I said, do you know what SSA means? She's like, no. Well, grab the crayons. I'm going to have to spell it out for you because I can't even say it. And at the end of this whole hour and a half or hour-long conversation, after describing some of the causes that I judged were the causes and my experiences, I said, the ball's in your court. And I had anticipated the worst. I had expected that she was going to dump me, and hoped for the best. And her response, as I said, ball's in your court, so what do you want to do? How do you want to end this? And she looked at me and she said, are you crazy? And I remember thinking, no, that's not what you're supposed to say. And she said, I love you all the same. This is what made you you. This is a part of you. And those words have stuck with me. And I'd never felt that type of reception before from a peer, from a friend. And truthfully, she's the first friend I ever told. Those were difficult and yet faith-filled days for us, for our relationship. And I realized that all those years of praying and hoping it would just go away, and praying that it would, that wasn't going to happen. God had a whole different plan for me. And as I put my trust in Him, it's opened up in ways that I could never describe in words. Not just peace anymore, but faith, confidence, knowing who I am, discovering my own masculinity, discovering parts about myself that I didn't know were there. There's an assertive part of me that came alive through this self-discovery, recognizing that I'm capable of far more than what I had limited my own mindset to when dating those previous girls, and that my capabilities only expanded when I got faithful with my wife, and I trusted her, and I trusted God to do with me more than I can do for myself. That's not been easy, and it's a day-to-day thing, but my goodness, it's awesome. I've seen miracles, and I've felt joy and connection that I never dreamed was possible with my wife. I thought that was only meant to be in a homosexual relationship, and that's just not true for me. So, that's kind of my story in a nutshell. It's been one heck of an adventure. We have a beautiful daughter that I love to death that I never thought was possible. My future is awesome. I see myself continuing to develop into my own masculinity. I see my marriage as even more fulfilling than it has been, even though it's been remarkable. I see more children in the future. I see those spirits who are waiting to come down to my household. I see myself as a protector, as a father, as somebody committed to providing for them and teaching them the right ways. I see a brighter future than I've ever seen. And ironically, that's through accepting these aspects of myself that I thought were entirely unacceptable. And that was the drive to eradicate them. And yet, endorsing these parts of me I grew up hating is exactly my future. That doesn't mean living the gay lifestyle. That means taking the gifts that are in it. That means taking the gold that this is laced with. Ether 12:27, I give unto men weakness that they may be humble, and if they humble themselves and have faith in me, I'll make their weakness become strengths unto them. The faith in me is the crucial part, the action, the becoming. And I know that God can do that. He's done it with me, and He'll continue to do it.
I know that the Lord has had a hand in our lives and us coming together from that point that we figured that out. I mean, it was apparent. And then down to his phone call of, we need to talk. And so I spent time just reading my scriptures on the grounds outside of the temple, and ended up reading that night the Ether 12:27 and saying, whatever he's going to say, whoever he is and whatever makes him who he is has made him into the man that I love. So from there, as he said, him telling me, it was just kind of, okay. No, where do we go from here? Choosing him and having him choose me, I gotta say, I've got double the luck, because he chose me out of all of the women and all of the men that he could have had. And so I knew where he had come from, and I had hope in where we would go together.